Okay, OBS is saying it's connected. And we do have connection there. Okay, sweet.
Okay.
We're good. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right, well, welcome back to Free Beer Society for September 1st. A little bit of a late show. After a week of me being out of the county, and I'll be out of the county again next week, but it sounds like we're lining up on both being unavailable.
So that's fine with me. I have family over for the week, so
Yeah.
gone from out of town for a while, so
All right.
that works well.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, welcome to your one-stop shop for all things free and open source software and tech policy and the intersection thereof. I'm your host, Tim TK, comic book writer and hobbyist hacker. I've been told is a good credential to give on the show. I do stuff on Hack the Box, and I haven't really done anything of note, but I've done a few capture flag events and know my way around security vulnerability. And I'm joined, as always, by Brookfan.
Hello.
Fellow politic and computer nerd.
Yeah, very much so.
So,
Seems to be a smaller show tonight. There's less. Feels like less than we normally cover.
Yeah, a little bit less. Part of that's just due to timing. I think also some of that is I feel like the stories this week haven't really necessarily been tech related, as much as we kind of hope that we are going towards Trump dying or faking his death to avoid releasing the Epstein files. But I feel like a lot of the interesting tech stuff has happened has kind of been more so related to well, we do have one government thing that's interesting, but that's been mostly some weird tech policy and tech security stuff that's been happening outside of the standard government intersections.
Fair. All right. Okay, let's start it.
Yeah, the first one for tonight. This is from Ryan Whittam at Ars Technica. Google will block sideloading of unverified Android apps starting next year. And some context for those of you who don't know, since they'll probably get into it at the end, but we can cover it a little more succinctly. The Android smartphones, the competitor to Apple's iPhone, has been notable for a few things. One of it is it being open source. Another is that it is Linux based. So if you knew your way around the Linux dev kit and or got the Android dev kit because it used similar architecture, you could go ahead and anyone could make an app, and their Google's preferred chain of this, you make the app and you submit it to the Google Play Store, and then Android would then deploy it from there and do its little security checks. The same deal as if you're like uploading something to Bazaar or a Flatpak or GitHub. Only GitHub doesn't really screen code as often, that user beware. But something that I would take advantage of, and a lot of people do, is that because of its open nature, is that you could sideload apps from their websites, from their repositories, to get around either marketplace restrictions or to find software that is unsupported and dead, and no one is really like abandonware that someone's keeping alive through a side project, or that just has lazy developers and they haven't bothered made the correct porting for it yet. An example of this is that I have to use a side-loaded version of Marvel Unlimited on my Kindle because just due to the nature of being competitors in entertainment now, Amazon and Marvel have not ported the Marvel Unlimited app to Kindle. So I had to do my own porting and updating and everything like that, and going through using the repository for that app. Anyway, so getting into the story. Android's open nature sets it apart from the iPhone, as the era of touchscreen smartphones began nearly 2 decades ago. Little by little, Google has traded some of that openness for security, and its next security initiative could make the biggest concessions yet in the name of blocking bad apps. Google has announced plans to begin verifying the identities of all Android app developers, and not just those publishing on the Play Store. Google intends to verify developer identities no matter where they offer their content, and apps without verification won't work on most Android devices in the coming years. Google used to do very little curation of the Play Store or Android market if you go back far enough, but it has long sought to improve the platform's reputation as being less secure than the Apple App Store. Years ago, you could publish actual exploits in the official store to gain root access on phones, but now there are multiple reviews and detection mechanisms to reduce the prevalence of malware and banned content. While the Play Store is still not perfect, Google claims apps siloed from outside its store are 50 times more likely to contain malware. This, we are led to believe, is the impetus for Google's new developer verification system. The company describes it like an ID check at the airport, since requiring all Google Play app developers to verify their identities in 2023. It has seen a precipitous drop in malware and fraud. Bad actors in Google Play leveraged anonymity to distribute malicious apps, so it stands to reason that verifying app developers outside of Google Play could also enhance security. However, making that happen outside of its App Store will require Google to take a page from Apple's playbook and flex its muscles in a way many Android users and developers could find intrusive. Google plans to create a streamlined Android developer console, which devs will use if they plan to distribute apps outside the Play Store. After verifying their identities, developers will have to register their package name and sign keys of their apps. Google won't check their content or functionality of the apps, though. Google says that only apps with verified identities will be installable on certain Android devices, which is virtually every Android-based device, if it has Google services on it. If you have a non-Google build of Android on your phone, none of this applies. However, that's a vanishingly small fraction of the Android ecosystem outside of China. Google plans to begin testing this system with early access in October of this year. In March 2026, all developers will have access to the new console to get verified. In September 2026, Google plans to launch this feature in Brazil, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. And then the next step is still hazy, but Google is targeting 2027 to expand verification requirements globally. So, kind of the long and short of it is that Google is essentially providing a means to crack down on those developers who are providing ports of abandonware or of content that, technically, for example, like the Marvel Limited app that I'm using on my Kindle, because it's not actually put out there by, it is put out there by Marvel, but because Kindle does not support it, as it gets Kindle's, like, there's no actual TOS violation, but it is like this whole weird thing where in a unified world, right, where they figured to block this, I no longer have access to those comics I'm paying for on my Kindle device. So for things like that on Android, you could lose access to things you pay for. You could lose access to abandonware that technically no one has ownership of. Stuff that's being preserved artificially or digitally. And of course, like, the pirated content and other things like that. Which, I get the arguments for ethical piracy when it comes to certain companies. I get it. And will not incriminate myself on air. Beyond what is kind of standard for the show, I guess.
I'll say it again. I like to record stuff to be available somewhere.
Yes.
Can't on them, so.
I mean, yeah, same with you, right?
And
If also it comes around region lock. Certain things are only available in certain regions due to either licensing, which is its own weird version of dumb or whatever. That's why you use a VPN to stream stuff from like Canadian Netflix.
Yes.
So similarly, if there was something that's region locked, you could still download it and get it running via sideload. However, and there's no laws being broken, there's no contracts being broken. You're accessing software that is intended for distribution and use on a device that's intended to use it. It's just that there is weird region blocking in effect. So now that will no longer be available. And if you're a developer, and if you rely on your anonymity to just for your own safety, say you're making something for an application that helps victims of domestic abuse, and it does so in a way that is hard to report or hard to find. Now you have to identify yourself, register it normally, so now you're putting yourself and those victims at increased risk as well. And that is there are actual apps like that where they are meant to be sideloaded, so they're not seen on the play report or on the family Google account, so the husband can't see that the wife has downloaded it. And the author of that app, of course, wants to be somewhat anonymous because, especially in America, retaliation by angry white men is a very real thing. So
I'm surprised.
So this is a weird thing where, like, yes, having app stores that curate or that monitor the code and packages for the average user is absolutely necessary. People are dumb, and if given the chance, will download 50,000 viruses to their machine. That's why every baby Linux user gets the advice: use your software manager first. But there's certain applications where, either for the sake of access for content that you have legally paid for, that you have like signed a user agreement with, safety things like that, for like the domestic use example, or anything when it comes to preserving digital content. Now there's like both real security risks as well as just a weird third party. I would say violating the user contract, the user agreement that you have with the source of the software you're using. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really. I thought they kind of said it all well. Like, yeah. Yeah, I really have no thoughts on it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was good.
I have no real questions either. I'll see what he said makes sense.
But yeah, to you, does it also sound like it's just, if not an overstep, just kind of? I mean, for some parts, I feel like it's dumb for like the user base, because a lot of people that use Android or brag about using Android, I think, are the more tech savvy people who like the ability to sideload stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like it is a weird overstep to kind of go back on what makes your system unique.
Yeah, that sounds weird. That feels weird. That is true. That feels odd. I don't think it'll hurt their consumer base. Like, a bit.
Yeah, I think the average user would still be fine. I think I mean, maybe it's a point where like Linux in the United States now is at 4 or 5%, and that is enough of a market share that it's driving more support and more distribution to Linux. The point where now Make or Break and Supervive are available on Proton, so I no longer needed my Windows partition and went all in on a Linux distro. I think if we get like 4 to 5% of the market that wants to have a third-party phone that's more open source, more secure, I think that'll be helpful. I think this could be one of those driving factors towards that. But speaking of that Google verification, that doesn't necessarily mean that the software is safe to use. As I said before, in a lot of cases, it is buyer beware when it comes to checking your own code and fun stuff. From Saurav Ruja at FOSS News, Google verified free VPN caught red-handed spying on its users.
Of course.
Yeah. And the tag here, which I like, is that if it is free, you are the product, unless it's free and open source. There's a lot of internet wisdom that goes around. Oh, go ahead.
That logo. Who made that logo?
Yeah, supposedly that's the logo that they've used, that the company in question uses.
That feels sketchy in itself.
It's very, yeah, it's very Microsoft Paint. Says the guy who uses a very basic Photopea to make our thumbnails. But yeah, a lot of it was around is like, if you don't know how a software or a company is making money, it's because you are the product. You're what is being sold. Unless you know that something is open source, in which case, it is designed to just be out there and be given back to freely by the community, either in terms of development or potentially monetary contributions. But you have the code in front of you to know, or to have people out there who you trust, that know that the software is not spying on you. Okay. So getting into it, using a proven and secure VPN service is paramount in these dystopian times, with governments ramping up surveillance, corporations harvesting every click you make, and cyber criminals lurking around every digital corner. Your online privacy is at risk. Beyond choosing a reputable VPN provider, you need to harden your entire digital footprint. This means locking down your browser with privacy-focused extensions, disabling unnecessary permissions, and regularly auditing what extensions have access to data. Unfortunately, even when you think you're doing everything right, things can shift wildly. A worrying case has just surfaced where the free VPN.1 extension for Google Chrome has been caught red-handed spying on its users. The service has over 100,000 installs in Google's verified badge. Writing for Koi Security, Luton Siri, security researcher at Stealth and former IDF cybersecurity researcher, has accused FreeVPN.1 of secretly capturing screenshots of every web page users visit. The extension is said to have turned malicious in April 2025 when the developer added spyware functionality to capture screenshots silently. At first, the changes were subtle, hidden behind new permissions most users overlooked. Come July, this malicious extension went all in, starting to screenshot every website a user visited, tracking the user's location, device information, and sending all of it back to their servers without consent. The Koi security team reached out to the developer to clarify the intentions behind these features. The developer claimed it was background scanning and promising future opt-ins, but the evidence so far does not support these claims. Communications soon went silent, leaving Koi unable to verify any of its assurances. If you're to visit the website for VPN.1, the keyword ranks well on Google, by the way, you'll quickly understand that all the information there is just filler content. Only information there is just filler content. Blogs linked under the location section are utter garbage, and their contact support button is literally an email address. Also, a quick look at FreeVPN.1's terms of service and features makes it even clearer what's really going on. So the term of service here, it doesn't really say anything. It all says that you agree to use their content, and that by using their content, you agree to all of their terms and conditions, stated or unstated. And then it proceeds to not state more terms of service. So, essentially, yeah, it's like, I mean, I doubt that'll hold up in court at all if anyone were to take legal action, because you need to have some sort of good faith in your terms of service for the most part. But Trump's America, who knows? But yeah, that is super sketchy, and I'm glad I am not in any way exposed or involved in any of that. But if you did use FreeVPN.1, my suggestion is then to use any one of the potential services available out there that do cost money, because a service that costs you money, you don't trust anyone that this will do anything for free unless it's open source. But services out there that cost money that will go through and scrub your information from marketing databases, online databases. You can't really do much once it gets out into like dark web territory. I mean, everyone, like, it's now a matter of fact that everyone's social is floating out in the dark web. Whether or not that is attached to any of your other personal identifying information is not yet confirmed. So, that's why, be extra careful when dealing with stuff online, in case you don't want to give up any of that personal identifying information that someone could tie to that floating social and steal your identity with. Yeah. So, like I said, even with Google cracking down on sideloading and the claims of security, their track record for security as of recently is not great. As this add-on did also have Google's verified service badge, saying it was a trusted service. So yeah, what are your thoughts on either Google not catching this one, or just on in general the weird sketchiness that is this service that has yet to.
Thinking, I'm not sure what to say. How often does Google actually? How often does things slip through the cracks with Google when it comes to this? Do you think?
Probably more often than they want us to know.
So then it's not really an uncommon occurrence, maybe. So why is this so special?
Stream roll. So what makes this so special?
I would say bad, but I can't imagine they're the only ones doing it.
No, I mean, they're like most other services are pretty ass when it comes to catching this sort of stuff. But it's just that this is such a high, this was like an oddly high profile case, because just, not catching it is one thing, but not catching it but still having it be a verified piece of software on your platform.
That's worse.
That's yeah, that's a weird, because now Google has endorsed the software, and then this is happening at the same time as Google saying that they are cracking down on sideloading on Android phones for security.
So why were they endorsing this? Like, what the motivation? That's the.
My guess is that their endorsements come through a automatic system that it should get periodically reviewed by a real life human, but often does not, because that's the way these things usually go.
I think they have to look back at that to make sure it works correctly, because it clearly did a failure here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just if they were to have a manual review of the terms of service, they'd be like, "Oh, this is sketchy as fuck." What the? It's 3 paragraphs that say nothing. Your end user license agreement should, yes, it's super annoying and no one reads those things, but it should be as long as it is. It should be several pages long.
It should actually have information for you to read. Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, that logo still feels like the serpent from a scammer.
Yeah, it's very just freeware spyware. It hits the meme on the head. It's just super generic and says, and yeah.
Yeah. Do you think Google will try to do better now? I doubt it.
I doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's next about Orange Idiot?
Yeah. So this is a weird, sketchy business deal.
Yeah, I heard about this.
Yeah.
This thought to be coffin sports shit.
Yeah. So Trump says the U.S. will take 10% stake in Intel because the CEO wants to keep his job. Quote. That's from Ashley Bellinger at Ars Technica. Intel has agreed to sell the U.S. a 10% stake in the company, Donald Trump announced at a news conference Friday. The U.S. stake is worth $10 billion, Trump said, confirming that the deal was inked following his talks with Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan. Trump has previously called for Tan to resign, accusing the CEO of having concerning ties to the Chinese Communist Party. During their meeting, the president claimed that Tan walked in wanting to keep his job, and he ended up giving us a $10 billion for the United States. I said, I think it would be great having the United States as a partner. He agreed, and they've agreed to it. Trump said.
Oh boy.
And so, so that, while I do often screw up on reading stories, that's a direct quote. And quote, I think that's a great deal for them. Because he has the mental faculty of a dying, coughing baby. Hyperbole, but you know what I'm saying. Like, dude can't talk. Sources have suggested that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick pushed the idea of the U.S. buying large stakes in various chip makers like Intel in exchange for access to CHIPS Act funding that had already been approved. Earlier this week, Senator Bernie Sanders got behind the plan, noting that, quote, if microchip companies make a profit from the generous grants they receive from the federal government, the taxpayers of America have a right to a reasonable return of that investment, end quote. However, Trump...
illegal. That's even illegal.
Yes, the U.S. Because the U.S. is a public-private mixed economy. The public sector, the government, can at any time purchase stakes in a company if they are for sale, because it has to be done through a special agreement. Though it's not just like an average consumer does on the stock market. But that is, part of Boeing and like other government contractors. The government also has a stake in them. And part of it makes sense, like for defense contractors and whatever, the people owning things should be the government. But for certain things, it feels like a bit of an overstep. Like and this is a weird mixed one where I find myself like I was starting Bernie Sanders' idea of it's it's federal grant money, and ideally we get to the point where the workers own the means of production in some sort of way, whether that is I guess to get into my personal theories, I'm a fan of a Ryan market system where companies are forced to go public and then be publicly traded, not having individual owners or a selected board. Like, it has to be available for anyone to buy stock in. And so having this makes sense where and it would tie into the virtuous economic cycle where tax dollars go into the government investing in a program, and then the program coming back and being reinvested into profits from that program being reinvested into infrastructure and systems for the average American citizen. However, under Trump's administration, I don't feel like that's necessarily the goal or the end case. I think this is either just him trying to get some sort of backdoor into stuff that's being sold to China, or creating what was it here?
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Yes, there. Let me continue this. So Trump apparently doesn't plan to seek the stake in a company the U.S. has awarded CHIPS funding to. Instead, he plans on only approach chip makers that won't commit to increasing their investments in the United States. For example, a government official spoke anonymously, told the Wall Street Journal that the administration isn't looking to own equity in companies like TSMC that are increasing their investments in the United States. This two-pronged plan that may end Trump's bid to kill the CHIPS Act may have come after Trump started expecting some pushback on the Intel deal. It appears that TSMC was not receptive to the idea of selling the United States a stake in its chips just to keep CHIPS funding. So, it seems more so like he is trying to I mean, in some way, this makes sense, right? The companies that use CHIPS funding that then committed to using that funding to buy stuff in the United States either increase their production, increase their staffing, things like that. He's now buying stakes in companies that are not doing that. So part of this makes sense, but also, anytime we get into the government owning stake in digital technology, when we come into like that same idea of like everything is communications based, like the history of the world is written by communications, and when the government has control of a system that is necessary for daily operation, for your daily communication, we talked a lot about how having internet access is now mandatory to be a member of society at this point. You need to have fast, functional internet or to just in any way interact with the world as it is.
Right.
And that comes down to having a box in your house that has a microchip in it. And then having the government own a stake in the company that makes that microchip is a little questionable when it comes to, like, how that comes down. Like, there's a reason why there's so many different protections around the Postal Service that almost in a way make it independent from the rest of the government, even though it is a government entity, because you don't want to have that weird control over a communication system that could so easily be turned into a way of perpetuating tyranny. Yeah. So I'm kind of mixed on this one. This is actually the time where I'm not. I have a mixed reaction that yes, I agree with, like, Sanders' take on that, and that makes sense to have this be a way to economically invest back in the United States people. However, I do not think that is the intention of this administration, nor is that something they'll actively pursue.
As a plot, I don't trust the administration to do anything properly. So, and job dying means sit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
dying hypothetically does so.
Yeah. I think Trump's death is one of those things where, like, the benefits thereof will take time to unravel because the system is already in place. However, when it comes time for a new election, they're not going to have that strong-arm leader, and I don't know if they have anyone in their forefront who's as good of demagoguery as Trump is. Like, no one's going to be able to wrap around that fervor, and so they'll fall apart. But it's going to take at least the next election cycle.
Fans will not be able to,
Yeah.
The only way it works if they ask the kind of accelerate their plans.
Mm-hmm.
And to grab power.
Yeah.
That'd be the only way they would come up, I think, holding on to what they want.
Yeah.
If that's what they want. But yeah, this. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's where, like, perhaps if this was done underneath a Democratic president or like an independent, do you think that we'd have a different reaction to this? Like, would he be more in support of it?
Maybe.
Like, I mean, if it was for sure someone like Bernie Sanders, who has a track record of public reinvestment of like that, like I'd still be skeptical at some point, but I would take this more at face value of it's just a way of reinvesting money back into taxpayers' pockets. But
that should be good. Like,
yeah.
But if you're someone else, everybody, but consider Bernie, you trust Bernie more.
Mm-hmm.
At least what he says.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, like, we're already in such a place where, like, everyone's watching the government for the next big overstep or big crackdown because it's just been loss of freedom after loss of freedom after loss of freedom, that we just kind of view this as now they're going to try and control our ability to communicate at the root level in your home.
Yeah, so
Again, I don't know about I don't know the share breakdown of Intel. I don't know if 10% would be enough to have a controlling stake, or if that's just enough to be on the board. I'd assume it's not controlling. I'd assume it's just on the board.
I would think, but who
But then,
knows?
even then, having a member of the administration on the board seems, yeah. Interesting. Okay. This is a kind of a weird one. This is from the Reuters editorial staff at Reuters. Microsoft scales back Chinese access to cyber early warning system.
What does this mean?
I'm gonna have to refresh myself on this as well. I'm gonna have to read through it because it's been a little bit since I've actually read through this one. But I believe it's also kind of a weird mixed reaction story. So Microsoft said on Wednesday it has scaled back some Chinese companies' access to its early warning system for cybersecurity vulnerabilities following speculation that Beijing was involved in a hacking campaign against the company's widely used SharePoint servers. The new restrictions come in the wake of last month's sweeping hacking attempts against Microsoft's SharePoint servers, at least some of which Microsoft and others have blamed on Beijing, that raised suspicions among several cybersecurity experts that there was a leak in the Microsoft Active Protections Program, or MAP, which Microsoft uses to help security vendors worldwide, including in China, to learn about cyber threats before the general public, so they can better defend against hackers. Beijing has denied involvement in any SharePoint hacking. Microsoft notified members of the MAP program of the SharePoint vulnerabilities on June 24th, July 3rd, and July 7th. Reuters had previously reported because Microsoft said it first observed exploitation attempts on July 7th, the timing led some experts to allege that the likely scenario for the sudden explosion in hacking attempts was because a rogue member of the MAP program misused the information. In a statement, Microsoft said several Chinese firms would no longer receive proof of concept code, which mimics the operation of genuine malicious software. Proof of concept code can help cybersecurity professionals seeking to harden their systems in a hurry, but it can also be repurposed by hackers to get a jumpstart on the defenders. Microsoft said it was the information that provided its partners could be exploited, which is why we take steps, both known and confidential, to prevent misuse. We continuously review participants and suspend or remove them if we find they violated their contract with us, which includes our prohibition on participating in offensive tactics. Microsoft declined to disclose the status of investigation of the hacking or go into specifics about which companies have been restricted. Okay. So I'm translating this down to layman's terms. Microsoft has a security program which they share with a bunch of the people that they work with, a bunch of the companies that they work with on deploying security. So essentially, these are like companies that work between Microsoft and other firms to set up their security. The security firms will receive information from Microsoft on what sort of hacks they're seeing out there, what code they've seen, like an example type code, as well as what's happening with their SharePoint service, which these vendors essentially rely on for work. And it's kind of like, because of how big Microsoft is, it's kind of assumed that every functional government in the world uses them in some way, probably including a security firm that uses SharePoint in some way. And so the assumption is that a bunch of hacks happened, tried to attack SharePoint from China right after Microsoft shared some demonstration code that they were seeing out in the world, and that certain vulnerabilities that SharePoint was experiencing. Because Microsoft had already shared this, like they'd probably been able to already like close those vulnerabilities as they were being disclosed, and then be aware of what was happening. So SharePoint likely did not receive any actual attacks at that point. Didn't have any breaches at that point, but they still were receiving attacks, disclosed vulnerabilities. Because it was to the letter of what Microsoft had said it was, they assumed that it was an inside man, someone who's getting their news. And so they suspended, I would assume it would be firms that had IP addresses or shared geolocations with the IP addresses of the attackers. And the reasons why someone would attack SharePoint is because it's assumed to be used by a branch of every government, so if you want to get a hold of some other government secrets, getting in through a backdoor, trying to find some way to get in through SharePoint and then back into the government's network from there makes sense. But again, it's also kind of a way for me to complain about monolithic data companies controlling everything, because now everyone is, sharing one attack vector. Like there's one attack surface that everyone has equal access to. So it seems like, again, they probably have like the best teams in the world trying to like defend this thing, but it, but yeah, so it's kind of some weird data security stuff. In terms of now we have a corporation that is able to influence not necessarily data policy in another country, but is withholding another country's government's ability to interact with the software because of bad actors within the country. So we get into this weird point of late stage capitalism where the corporation has more power than the government in some ways. That Microsoft is restricting a privilege given to the Chinese government and the Chinese firms. Yeah, and it's one of those things where it makes sense what happened. I have my own mixed views about why we allow companies to be so megalithic and so much of a monopoly that it creates these weird like golden egg style attack surfaces. But the fallout makes sense.
Fair. I have nothing to really say.
Okay.
I will admit, I think I'm a bit out of it tonight. So, I will let the case sadly now. I thought it would be, which is annoying.
That's right.
But I still find the stories interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have much to respond, I think, to for this week as much. Yeah. My mind is starting to think of that, though. I feel there's been some stuff with China lately, though, besides this too, right? Up recently.
There's been a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the current Cold War really is just the tech race with China on who can have the best AI, the best space program, the best digital weapons. The idea that the next war isn't necessarily going to be fought with guns, but instead through like hacking teams trying to breach each other's servers fast enough to essentially dismantle an economy.
Right. Yeah.
Right, because again, like the whole point where like the double-edged sword of everything, like you need to have internet to function in society. However, that means the society must have internet to function. It means that everything is networked, and even with protections and redundancies and trying to take things offline or like offline backups, the idea is that still if a good security team can breach and exploit and manipulate industry or commerce in some way, you can still cause a catastrophic amount of damage to an economy. And now with every company being some form of capitalistic system, like even China is right now out capitalizing the United States in terms of its private sector. Only country only enough that is not capitalistic is North Korea, but that's its own thing of they're not even communist, they're just straight up fascist. They just slap a label on it. But even then they still have the internet access over there in certain points, like And so, yeah. uh, it's another weird development in the Cold War that's happening, I think, because also, even though Microsoft is not owned by the government, there's enough like United States government contracting there that this could be seen as a step or a slight to Beijing in kind of that same weird data Cold War that's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of China and the data Cold War, we've already talked about before on previous episodes. I don't know if they're on the lost episodes that Google refused to upload, but we talked a bit about Chinese open source AI models that are actively more environmentally sound and more ethically trained than the current proprietary models happening in the United States. However, from Surav Rudra at FOSS News, can America catch up? The Atom Project takes on China's AI lead. The open source AI space has intensified dramatically, with Chinese models outpacing American competitors in downloads, performance rankings, and developer adoption. What once was America's stronghold has shifted significantly, prompting concerns across Silicon Valley. Interestingly, America built its AI leadership on open research and collaboration, the same approach China now employs effectively. While US companies moved toward closed development, Chinese organizations have scaled up on open innovation strategies, attracting researchers and businesses worldwide with permissive licenses and competitive performance. Now, a new initiative looks to undo the damage by restoring America's open source AI ecosystem. Nathan Lambert, a former Hugging Face researcher now at the Allen Institute for AI, or AI2, has launched the Atom Project, to build truly open American AI models. The name itself stands for American Truly Open Models, with Nathan emphasizing that this is a community movement, not him fundraising or starting an organization. The project has attracted heavyweight supporters, including OpenAI's Chief Strategy Officer Jason Kwan, Hugging Face CEO Clement Dillon, and PyTorch co-founder Sumith Chintila. Nathan argues that America needs to maintain at least one lab focused on training open models with 10,000 plus NVIDIA H100 GPUs, warning that China already has at least 5 labs producing and releasing open models that match or exceed the capabilities of the best US open models. In the end, the Atom Project aims to establish a US-based lab that develops openly accessible AI models, fostering a robust research ecosystem and ensuring long-term competitiveness in open source AI. The initiative seeks to empower researchers and developers by providing open access to cutting-edge AI models and training infrastructure. By doing so, it aims to accelerate innovation, lower barriers to entry, and create a sustainable ecosystem for American AI research. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've been talking about. What eventually would need to happen would be not just China, but America would need to also do truly open source AI again. With the idea being that with it being open source, not only can you ensure that it is ethically trained, you're not running into stealing intellectual property or stealing art, but also you can develop it more efficiently and effectively, so you're not, killing the planet with every prompt. That is actually, running very environmentally sound.
Fair.
What are your thoughts? Do you have hopes for this particular project? Because it sounds like there's some heavy hitters behind it, or do you think that the already existing proprietary companies are going to try and stop it, like the Metas and the
I think that will happen, but I hope that's not.
Yeah.
Because look, whenever you have, it sounds like, if you could correct me, please correct me, obviously, but like, this sounds like good competition, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because that's one of the things that usually ends up happening is even for proprietary companies, they still benefit from open source alternatives because the open source will put out a feature or a tool that is better than what is currently being offered by that proprietary software. So then they'll do their own version of it that's on their paid platform. So even if it is just sparking ways for things that they put behind their paid platforms, it's still kind of creating this lead through open source innovation.
Sure.
Yeah. My view on this is that I think that generative AI will have great use when it comes to being a research assistant. Just being able to summarize like 100 articles at once online and be incredibly helpful for guiding, like for the daily user, for finding answers for stuff that's work or business related. It'd be incredible. But for but on to being like the power users, like actual like researchers, it will provide them stepping off points for continuing down that vetted research. It'll be more so a way of like doing like the library query where you have all the research brought to you, but now you have like a stepping off point with summaries attached to it. However, in order to do that, you do need, I think, OpenAI, like open source, is going to be great because will allow it to be trained without stealing that information or stealing intellectual property, so you're not running into like the current legal troubles that AI is now. But also in a way that will make it easier to catch and develop for other issues we have with AI, which is that it currently hallucinates information, just straight up lies, or that it will miscategorize, missummarize, and generally like be like with how untrustworthy AI is currently. I think having a open source ability for people to like a bunch of different people, not just one research team, one development team, but everyone in the community to work against that, I think could be quite beneficial.
Okay.
I've kind of been doing a lot of talking with tonight's show, and I feel like we kind of sped through a lot. So, do you have any closing thoughts on tonight's show?
Yeah, first, I am sorry for that tonight.
Right.
I know normally I'm not reckless, as you know. This one interests me. I want to see the first one happens with the competition because it could push sense, I think. But I don't trust tech leaders to do that.
Yeah.
I don't trust companies to do that. It's a lot of industries these days where someone tries to make something better, you just kind of squash it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it feels like a cultural thing almost.
Yeah.
The answer, 50 years ago was, you made something better than me. Well, the response that is obviously, I now have to make something better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's, well, you're not allowed to do that, so it doesn't stop you from doing that. Which is all straight up. But that's our culture right now.
Yeah.
Only that I see. The stories were interesting. I am not doing the best tonight, so I don't feel I was able to appreciate them as much as I would have wanted to. Which sucks, but they were interesting for sure. The VPN one with Google was surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that loader still feels like a scam.
Yeah.
I just looked at that for a minute. I'm like, if anyone looked at that for 5 seconds, you would have noticed a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of brings up a question like how much should really be automated.
Right.
Or how do you better automate? How do you vet better automated tools to try to prevent slips like that from happening?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that's above my pay grade. So, but yeah. But plan is then next week we likely will not do a show, but the week after we will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet you a lot of stuff to talk about considering the world these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's never a slow news week, which is, I guess, good for us, but also bad.
Yeah. That's a mistake, but
Right.
that really keeps things fresh.
Exactly. Hopefully, in the future, we get to have a week where it's nothing but good developments and new software that we're all excited to see.
That'd be amazing. You know, it would stop moving to cyberpunk future.
Yeah. Can we get off the rails on the cyberpunk train and start heading towards Star Trek future, but minus the nuclear apocalypse that caused it to happen?
Yeah, we're also doing that too.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
I
yeah.
guess that's a little telling that even like the most utopian hope we have for the future still involves um, a nuclear holocaust that causes the world to realize, like, oh, maybe we should stop being shitty.
Yeah, humanity is stubborn.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
That's all I have to say tonight.
Sounds good. Like you said, we'll be back not next week, but the week after is the hope with more stories. We potentially have some guests in the future to talk about perhaps some more local level politics and technology stuff at that level. So we'll see how that goes. But we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Until that time, keep it in scope unless your plan is to cause some good trouble.
Great. Take care all.